Every secret has a price. And this is a true story.
A dark cinematic background track that builds tension from the very first second. Low, ominous drones and deep bass create suspense. A slow heartbeat like percussion begins, then layers of ticking clocks and distant metallic echoes fade in. After 30 seconds, add rising strings and dramatic pulses to increase intensity, like a thriller trailer. Every story hides secrets, and every secret demands a price. This one begins with silence. 47 days of silence between a husband and his wife. No hugs, no kisses, not even the brush of a hand. Then one night, he reached for her, and she said 5 words sharper than any knife. "Don't touch me right now." That was the moment he realized the woman standing in his kitchen wasn't his wife anymore. The hoodie was the same, the house was the same, but she was a stranger. And when her phone lit up with a message that read, "Still thinking about this morning, you're unreal," he knew everything had changed. This is not a story about romance, not about forgiveness. It's about betrayal. It's about lies whispered in silence, and about the moment when truth refuses to stay hidden. A hotel, a red bag of lingerie, a photo he could never erase, and a silence so heavy it nearly buried them both. But here's the twist. He didn't scream, he didn't explode. He waited, he watched. Because sometimes the most dangerous revenge is patience. So listen carefully, follow every word, and when it's over, tell me in the comments, if this had been your life, what would you have done?
This is a true story. Names and locations have been changed to protect privacy, but everything you are about to hear really happened in the United States. Don't touch me right now. She didn't scream it. She didn't whisper it. She said it like a line she had rehearsed in the mirror. My hand froze midair, inches above her shoulder. That's when I realized something horrifying. I hadn't touched my wife in 47 days. Not a brush of fingers, not a shared knee on the couch, not even a half-asleep hug in the dark. Nothing. 47 days of silence. She wore the navy hoodie I bought her last Christmas. Her hair was damp, but the smell was not her shampoo. It was someone else's cologne, and it wasn't mine. I stepped back, not out of anger, but out of trespass. I felt like a stranger in my own home. The beige walls hadn't changed, the chipped tiles were still there, the stain on the rug still marked my clumsiness. But the woman in front of me, she wasn't the same one who once fell asleep in my lap during documentaries. She turned to the fridge and said casually, "We're out of oat milk. Can you grab some tomorrow?" I didn't answer, because her phone lit up on the counter. A preview flashed. "Still thinking about this morning. You're unreal." No name, just a heart emoji. She didn't notice me read it. She didn't even notice me. I walked out the door, past the mailbox I painted for her birthday, past the car she scolded me for parking too close to the hatch. I walked until my legs ached. That night, I slept in the guest room. She didn't ask why. The next morning, she posted a coffee photo on Instagram. Caption, "New beginnings." I hadn't left, but she had. That was the day I stopped waiting. That was the day I started preparing her ending. She didn't knock on the guest room door. I waited, stupidly, listening for footsteps, for the hallway creak, for any sign she cared, but silence weighed heavier than anger. At 2:14 a.m., I scrolled our old texts, back when "I love you" came unprovoked, back when she told me "you make the world less sharp." That version of her was gone. What remained was surgical, cold, razor sharp. The next morning, she hummed a pop song, cheerful. I sat on the guest bed wondering if I dreamt the night before, but her phone vibrated. Not once, not twice, 5 times. She laughed softly by the third ring. Not the laugh we once shared over bad movies. This laugh was careless, like someone had taken something sacred and twisted it. That's when jealousy died, and truth took over. I didn't confront her. Confrontation would only make me another obstacle. Instead, I began documenting. Screenshots, photos of her phone lighting up, quiet transfers of her calendar to my tablet. I didn't know what I was hunting, but I needed proof. Not for courts, not for friends, for myself, to know I wasn't insane. One Friday, she told me she had an art class, a watercolor workshop downtown. 3 hours. I offered to drive. She smiled too sweetly. "No need, babe. You'd be bored." Babe, a word she hadn't used in months. It landed like acid. So I followed her, waited 30 minutes, then drove behind her, careful in traffic. She pulled into a boutique hotel, the White Fern, not an art studio. She wasn't carrying paint supplies. She was carrying lingerie. A man in a charcoal blazer opened the door before she could knock. He wasn't a stranger. He looked like someone who already knew the color of her bedroom walls. I didn't go in. I didn't cause a scene. I took a photo, just one. Her smiling like she hadn't smiled at me in 2 years. That photo burned into me, but I saved it in 3 cloud accounts, just in case. When she came home, hair damp, she saw me at the dining table. She asked lightly, "How was your day?" I asked back, "How was your class?" She replied, expressive. We painted roses. I stared into her eyes. "Funny, you came home without a paintbrush." For a second, her mask cracked. Then she smirked, ear reading into things again. I stood, grabbed my jacket, and left. Not forever, just long enough to let her wonder if I was finished trying.
The next day she cried. Not in front of me, she never did that, but I saw it in the security footage from the porch camera I'd installed 2 weeks earlier. She stood outside, staring at the driveway, wiping her eyes like someone watching a foundation crumble. She had no idea it wasn't over, not by a long shot. If I couldn't have honesty, I would build it myself, piece by piece, until she unraveled. I didn't confront her with the hotel photo. That would have been too easy, too expected. I wanted her to reveal herself, to collapse under the weight of her own lies. So I began a game, silent, precise, controlled, a game she didn't even know she was playing. The first move was small, invisible. I canceled the automatic grocery deliveries. On the 3rd day, she opened the fridge and frowned. "Did you forget the order?" I shrugged, probably. That night she ate dry cereal without complaint. 1 crack. Next, I stopped replying to her texts quickly, not cold, just delayed. Hours, sometimes all day, always polite. "Sorry, busy afternoon. Didn't see your message." She started asking, "Is everything okay?" And I'd respond with vague nothingness. "Just tired." The real shift happened when I stopped asking about her. No, "How was your day?" No, "What do you want for dinner?" I became a mirror, reflecting only what she gave. And when she realized the spotlight wasn't on her anymore, she flickered. She grew restless, desperate. She made efforts again. Lipstick at the dinner table, documentaries on the couch, even a road trip suggestion. "To reconnect," she said. That's when I knew she felt it. The vacuum, the absence of the husband who had forgiven, begged, carried her guilt. That man was gone, and without him, She didn't know who she was. But the best move was the one she never saw coming. I printed the hotel photo, matte, no digital trail, slipped it inside a blank birthday card. No message, just the image. Then I waited. A week later, she said she had a coworker's baby shower. She dressed up, perfume she hadn't worn in months. She left in a rush. I placed the envelope in her makeup drawer, second layer down, not hidden, not obvious. The perfect trap for a private discovery. That same day, I packed a bag and drove 3 hours north to my cousin Warren's cabin. No note, no calls, just absence. At the cabin, I shut off my phone. No laptop, no distractions. Just logs to burn and silence to think. For 2 days, I let her spiral. I imagined her tearing through the house, checking voicemail, wondering. I imagined the moment she found that envelope. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were 12 missed calls, 6 messages. The first 4 were mild. Hey, just checking in. Where are you? Then sharper. Did you go through my things? And finally a plea. Please call me. I didn't. Not yet. The next day I returned like nothing happened. She was waiting at the doorway, eyes rimmed red. She looked like she hadn't slept, but she didn't cry in front of me. She never did. She asked, "Why would you leave that photo like that?" Her voice shaking. I hung my coat and said calmly, "I always told you you hated surprises. I figured this one wouldn't disappoint." She followed me into the kitchen, frantic. "So you've known for a while? Did you follow me? Are you going to tell anyone?" Her words tumbled fast, afraid not of me, but of what might come next. I poured myself water and replied evenly, "There's nothing to tell. You already lived it." Her unraveling had only just begun. That night she tried to reclaim control. She cooked dinner, something she hadn't done in months. Chicken marsala, candles, cloth napkins. She set the table like it was some twisted date night, a ghostly imitation of a life already dead. I ate in silence, slowly, deliberately, every bite mechanical. She watched me with trembling hands. Halfway through, she broke. "So you've known for a while." Not a question, an admission. I set my fork down. "Since the first time you said you were tired, but came home with freshly washed hair and a phone that stayed too quiet." She flinched. Not much, but enough. She pushed food around her plate, then whispered something I don't think she planned to say aloud. I thought I could control it, that it would stay small. It. She couldn't even name it. Not a mistake, not infidelity, just it. Naming it would make it real. I said nothing. I wasn't her priest. I wasn't there to absolve. Later that night, I found her sitting in the closet, knees to her chest, staring at the shoebox of letters I had written her years ago. She didn't touch them, just stared like they belonged to a stranger. "I never wanted this to become war," she murmured. "I didn't think it would hurt you this way." That was the moment I realized she didn't think betrayal was violence, because she hadn't screamed, because she hadn't broken plates. She believed silence made it less cruel. So I asked her, "When did you stop believing I mattered?" Her head snapped up. "That's not fair." "No," I said, arms folded. "What's not fair is acting like I didn't notice when you stopped asking how I slept, when you left the room every time I tried to talk about anything that wasn't you." She swallowed. "I didn't stop caring. Then why give yourself to someone else? Like I was just a roommate with a mortgage." Silence. Then, finally, "Because I wanted to feel wanted." It didn't surprise me. What surprised me was how little it hurt to hear.
The next morning, her car keys were still on the hallway shelf. She hadn't left for work. Instead, she sat on the back porch, wearing the same hoodie from the night before, drinking coffee, staring at the yard like it held answers. She didn't notice me watching through the blinds. That's when I made my second move. I contacted a leasing office across town, 1-bedroom unit, corner floor, no shared walls. I wired the deposit under my middle name. No ceremony, no drama. That afternoon, I packed a single suitcase, essentials only. I left the rest. Shirts she never folded, shoes she mocked me for keeping too long, even the wedding photo still hanging on the hallway wall. I didn't flip it down. It didn't deserve the drama. On her pillow, I placed an envelope. Inside, a printed screenshot of a bank transfer. Half of our savings down to the cent. A note beneath it. This is what fairness looks like. I left without slamming doors. No dramatic exit, just the quiet click of the handle. And as I pulled out of the driveway, I didn't feel like I was leaving home. I felt like I was finally stepping into it. The first 48 hours in the new apartment were silence. No texts, no calls, just beige walls, a leaky faucet, and the hum of solitude. It didn't feel like relief. It felt like shock, the kind you feel after a car crash, where your body's fine, but your mind hasn't caught up. I kept expecting her to show up. Hoodie, perfume, lies. But she didn't. And I realized, Darla, yeah, I'll use her name now, wasn't looking for me. She was waiting to see if I'd crawl back. She mistook my silence for hesitation. What she didn't know was that I wasn't deciding. I was watching. 2 days later, she finally reached out. Not with a call, not with a text, but with a post. A photo of her in the backyard, barefoot, hair catching the sunlight just right. Caption, still standing. It had 12 likes. One comment from a man named Ames Manning, 89. You always were. The profile was private, but the picture was familiar. A charcoal blazer, the hotel doorway, the man I had caught in that single damning photo. He was commenting openly now, like he'd won, and she left it there, visible, untouched. She wasn't hiding anymore, or worse, she didn't care. I didn't react, not online, not in person. I let it sit, but I started planning again. I opened a new bank account, moved my half of the money, and then I sent one last transfer to my sister. The one Darla always said was too dramatic, too judgmental. Turns out judgmental people are useful when you're dealing with liars. I gave my sister access to everything, the screenshots, GPS logs, emails I had pulled from the trash before Darla could wipe. Because Darla wasn't just careless, she was arrogant. The next night, at 2:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message. No greeting, just 3 words. What did you do? I smiled, because I hadn't done anything. Not yet. But someone else had. My sister had posted an anonymous thread on a popular relationship forum. Title, When You Discover Your Sister-in-Law's Affair, and She Still Plays the Victim. She didn't name Darla. She didn't need to. The details were enough. The hotel, the boutique bag, the art class excuse, the husband who finally stopped apologizing for breathing. Within hours, her social media was gone, vanished. That afternoon, she called. I let it ring. Then came a text. You said you wouldn't go nuclear. I replied, I didn't. You did. I just stopped shielding you from the blast. She didn't answer. That evening, she knocked on my apartment door. I didn't open it, not because I was afraid, not because I was cruel, but because I wanted her to feel what I had felt for months, to be on the outside of something she once owned. She stood there for 15 minutes. The camera I had installed above the door recorded every second. She didn't cry, didn't yell, just stood, frozen, a silhouette of someone realizing the silence meant permanence. She didn't come back the next day, but the whispers did. Screenshots spread, friends, family,
Even her Pilates instructor sent me a message. I'm sorry. I should have said something months ago. That one hit harder than it should have. Not because I needed their pity, but because it meant they all saw it happening and said nothing. No one tells you that betrayal isn't just about the one who lies. It's about everyone who watches them do it. And their silence, it screams louder than the crime itself.
3 days after the thread exploded, she called again. This time, I answered. Her voice was flat, like smoke through a wall. "You think this makes you look strong?" I let the silence hang before I replied, "No, it makes me look honest." She scoffed, but it sounded hollow. "Do you know how much I've lost in a week?" "Do you mean attention?" I asked. That landed. Silence stretched. For a moment, I thought she'd hung up. Then, slower, she said, "You're acting like you never made mistakes." And that's the part I remember most about that call. Not her defensiveness, not the failed accusations, just that one line, as if her betrayal balanced out sins I never committed. So I asked, "What exactly did I do wrong, Darla? Forget to change the oil in your car? Not notice your new haircut fast enough? Love you too quietly while you ran out of reasons to respect me?" No answer. I continued, "If you're looking for justification, you'll need a better story than 'you didn't inspire me anymore.'" The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was surgical, clean. Finally, she whispered, "I want to go to counseling, just to understand what went wrong." I didn't laugh. I didn't yell. I simply said, "I already understand." She asked, "What do you mean?" I told her the truth. Some people don't cheat because they're unhappy. They cheat because they can't stand being loved without chaos. You needed friction to feel real, and when I gave you peace, you turned it into emptiness. She breathed hard into the phone, then softly, "You didn't love me wrong. You just loved me in a way I couldn't return." And that, ironically, was the most honest thing she had said in years. I ended the call simply, "Don't come here again. There's nothing left to recover." But she did come again. Not to me, but to my sister's house. My sister called, furious. She knocked on my door, wanted to clear the air. I told her to clear the sidewalk instead. When Darla didn't leave, my sister handed her a sealed envelope. Inside were screenshots from a group chat I hadn't seen before. Messages between her and her friends, jokes about the hotel weekends, brags about how checked out I was. Even one line that made my hand tremble. I could train him to disappear without a fight. Screenshots don't lie. They don't soften. They don't gaslight. They are gospel. I read that line over and over, disappear without a fight. And I said aloud to no one, "You were right about one thing. I did disappear. But the fight, that part, is just beginning." I didn't expect her to show up at my office. Not after that. Not after everything. But she did. She stood by the elevator, dressed in black like she was attending the funeral of her old life. She didn't ask for me. She just waited, arms crossed, hoping I'd come down and unsee everything she'd done. A coworker walked into my office. "There's a woman downstairs. Says she won't leave unless you talk to her." I didn't answer. I stared out the window for a full minute, then walked to the break room, poured myself coffee, and sat back down. 10 minutes later, she was gone. That night, she texted, "Please, 5 minutes, just 5. I ignored it, not because I wanted to punish her, but because there was nothing left in me to give. Whatever love I had burned out somewhere between the hotel receipt and the screenshots of her laughing with her friends about my blindness. The next message came hours later. "I'm not with him anymore." I stared at it, realizing she still didn't understand. She thought this was about him. So I replied, "I wasn't destroyed because of who you slept with, Darla.
I was destroyed because of how easily you watched me fall apart and said nothing. She didn't text again, but the next morning, she posted an old photo of us by a lake. I was holding a fish I didn't catch. She was laughing in the background. The caption read, "There are things I can't fix, but I'll never forget the quiet way he held everything together." 200 likes, including one from the man in the blazer. Poetic in its own sick way. She was repainting the past with nostalgia, hoping people would forget the truth. But nostalgia without accountability is just manipulation dressed up pretty. A week later, I received a certified letter. No signature, just a single line on the page. "I didn't expect to break you. I thought you were unshakable." And that's when it hit me. She hadn't cheated out of passion or longing or weakness. She had done it as an experiment to see how far she could bend me before I shattered. But I never shattered. I vanished. Quietly, entirely. No fireworks, no warnings, just gone.
A few days later, another letter arrived, this time from a lawyer. It was clean, formal, neat. Divorce papers, signed with her full name, not Mrs. Merritt, just Darla Halbridge, her maiden name. Like I never happened. I signed them, drove them to the post office, dropped them in the mailbox. No return address. She didn't need to know where I was. She already knew what I'd become. The man who stayed loyal longer than she deserved. The man who left quieter than she expected. The man who didn't just walk away. He disappeared through every door she thought was locked. It's been 6 months now. 6 months since I last saw her. Not in person, not online, not even by accident. Just nothing. She vanished from my radar the same way I had vanished from hers years earlier, when she stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as furniture, something steady, background noise. And the strangest part? I don't hate her. I thought I would. I thought the bitterness would grow like a second spine, heavy and permanent, but it never came. Not even when I heard she'd moved to another state. Not even when a mutual friend told me she was seeing someone new. Quietly this time. No posts, no drama. She'd finally learned the cost of being careless with someone's soul. But by then, I'd already healed more than I ever expected. Because something changed after I signed those papers. Not suddenly, not like in the movies with some euphoric music and sunshine breaking through the clouds. No, healing was slower, quieter. It felt like waking up in my own skin again. I started remembering who I had been before her silence consumed me. The man who laughed without waiting for permission. The man who made pancakes at midnight just because he felt like it. The man who painted in the garage even though his art was terrible. I started painting again. Bad landscapes, sunsets that looked like melted sherbet, trees with too many branches. But I loved it because doing something purely for joy felt like rebellion in a world that measures everything. And then came new friends. Not the ones who asked, "What happened?" but the ones who asked, "What's next?" One of them was Mallory. She ran the bookstore near my new place. I met her when she caught me rearranging books by color instead of genre. Instead of scolding me, she laughed. I do that too when I'm avoiding something. We started talking, then walking, then sharing things we didn't even know we still remembered. By the second week, I told her about the divorce. I didn't want to hide it, didn't want to pretend I wasn't something I wasn't. She didn't flinch. She just nodded. "You don't look broken," she said. "You look rebuilt." That line stayed with me, because for the first time in a long time, I did feel rebuilt. Not patched, not glued together. Whole. Different shape, maybe, but whole. Last weekend, I returned to that same lake in Montana, where Darla and I once took a photo together. Not for nostalgia, but to prove to myself that the place wasn't poisoned. I stood on the dock, same spot, same breeze. But this time, I wasn't holding a fish I didn't catch. I was holding a canvas, a painting I'd made the night before. The lake, the trees, a man standing on the edge,
not waiting, just being. I left the painting on a bench nearby with a note taped to the back. What you used to be is not a prison. You can walk out whenever you're ready. I don't know who found it, maybe no one, maybe someone who needed it. But I realized then I didn't need closure from her. I had already given it to myself. And that was the most peaceful goodbye I've ever said.
6 months is a strange amount of time. Long enough for the shock to fade, short enough that the scars still feel fresh. Some nights, I still wake up expecting to hear her footsteps in the hallway, the soft creak of the floorboards, that low hum she used to carry with her. But when I open my eyes, there's only quiet. And in that quiet, I've learned something. We spend so much of our lives begging other people to validate our worth. We forget that sometimes the truest proof is in survival itself. I survived her silence. I survived her betrayal. I survived being erased by the one person who once swore she saw me most clearly. And in surviving, I became visible again to myself. The past no longer feels like a wound. It feels like a map, a series of roads I had to walk to get here. Roads lined with warning signs I ignored. Roads I'll never walk again. Do I miss her? No. I miss the version of myself I used to be when I still believed in her. But I don't miss her, because the woman I believed in doesn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. Maybe I was in love with a shadow. And that's the truth no one wants to hear about betrayal. It doesn't just take away a partner. It takes away the illusion you built around them. And once the illusion shatters, you don't get it back. But here's the thing. That's not tragedy. That's freedom. Because when the illusion dies, you finally see yourself standing in the rubble. And you realize you're still here, still breathing, still moving, still capable of love, even if it's just love for your own rebirth. I thought losing her would destroy me. Instead, it introduced me to a version of myself I'd forgotten. The man who laughs at his own bad jokes. The man who paints ugly trees and doesn't care. The man who holds silence not as punishment, but as peace. And when I look in the mirror now, I don't see a victim. I don't see someone broken. I see someone rebuilt. And that, more than revenge, more than exposure, more than any apology she could ever give me, that is victory. Because the story doesn't end with her. It ends with me. And me? I'm still standing.